As we all know, Donald Trump has been sending federal enforcement, federal agents to cities across the country, including in Portland and Chicago. And they've been intimidating peaceful protesters and illegally detaining them with no probable cause. They do not charge these individuals as they detain them. Now it turns out that some conservatives are speaking out against Donald Trump, including Rand Paul, who we'll get to in just a minute. But first, I want to start off with conservative Judge Napolitano, who's a regular on Fox News. Take a look.
Well, the federal government cannot put troops or military personnel or police on the streets without the invitation of the governor or the legislature of the state. That's not only federal law, that's in the Constitution. You have anarchy on one hand, and then if the troops come in the street, you have a potential for even more violence on the other hand. What happened in Portland over the weekend, David, was not only unlawful and unconstitutional, it was just plain wrong. Sending armed, untrained police into the streets wearing fatigues without the knowledge or consent of the local police actually caused more violence. All the people that they arrested, David, they didn't file one criminal complaint against anybody because they didn't have a basis to do so. They were just grabbing innocents off the street.
So I think that Judge Napolitano makes a compelling argument there, and it's important to have those kinds of arguments made on Fox News, where it seems that the conservative viewers who love to fearmonger about big government and tyranny seem to love the idea of federal agents going into various cities and cracking skulls over their constitutionally protected right to protest. And by the way, just to give you some more insight into the ridiculous defense coming from the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, who's the acting head or secretary of DHS, cited 40 US Code 1315 to argue that what DHS is doing is lawful and constitutional, but that's actually not the case. So the federal statute did provide flexibility to tap members of various agencies to assist in guarding federal property, but that it was never intended to send border agents, which is what's happening right now, trained to investigate a drug cartel to crack down on protests in the streets. So there's no question in my mind that what the Trump administration is doing is unconstitutional. It's good to hear a conservative on Fox News make that same argument. And Cenk, he's not the only one. Rand Paul also tweeted about this, saying, quote, "We cannot give up liberty for security. Local law enforcement can and should be handling these situations in our cities, but there is no place for federal troops or unidentified federal agents rounding people up at will."
Yeah, these situations where your own party's person is in charge really shows who's principled and who isn't. And Napolitano has passed the test. He's very conservative. We disagree with him on 90% of the issues, but he is actually principled. If you're a conservative, you do not want the federal government superseding local authority. It is one of the core tenets of conservatism, states' rights. When you say that Oregon and Illinois does not have states' rights to police their own streets, you're saying you don't believe in states' rights at all. And if you make the states' rights claims when it comes to racial issues or LGBTQ issues, you're basically saying, I never believed in states' rights. I just don't like black people or gay people. So those folks are outing themselves as we speak. But Napolitano apparently does actually believe in some degree of states' rights and local jurisdiction. And so you understand how our form of government works, because I know it's been a long time since 8th grade when most of us took civics, right? It's the local cops enforce local laws. So almost all of the laws that you're familiar with, theft, murder, rape, robbery, etc., are local laws. And so the federal government has nothing to do with them. So the federal government can protect its own property, parks, statues, etc., and usually does that without any kind of controversy. They don't normally send in hundreds of troops to do that. It's very, very unusual. In fact, it's never happened in modern times under any other president. And then the second thing they could do is they could enforce federal law. So that's why you have some federal officials in places near the border, because the border crossings are about federal law. Now, there are no border crossings in Portland, nor anywhere near it. So that's why it's weird for Customs and Border Patrol to be in the middle of Portland. And they're an army in search of laws to enforce. So when we talk about Chicago, which is apparently where they're going next, the president didn't even talk about protecting federal courthouses. He just said there's a lot of shootings over the weekend, so we're going to Chicago. Wait, what? That's all local laws. That has nothing to do with federal laws. In other words, he's saying these are my secret police, and I'm going to send them wherever I like, and I don't care what the Constitution or the laws say.
Yeah, he's incredibly transparent about it, and he shared what his plans are with reporters in the Oval Office just recently. So let's hear his reasoning behind why he wants to send these federal agents to specifically Democratic-led areas of the country.
There was a report out this morning that you're considering sending 175 federal troops to these cities to help local law enforcement. Can you fill us in on that?
It depends on what your definition of troops is. We're sending law enforcement. Portland was totally out of control. The Democrats, the liberal Democrats running the place, had no idea what they were doing. How about Chicago? I read the numbers were many people killed over the weekend. We're looking at Chicago too. We're looking at New York. Look at what's going on. All run by Democrats, all run by very liberal Democrats, all run really by radical left. But we can't let this happen to the cities. New York was up 348%, the crime wave. So the governor has to do something about it. And if the governor's not going to do something about it, we'll do something about it. New York's finest. And the fact is, they're restricted from doing anything. They can't do anything.
So what are you planning on doing?
Well, I'm going to do something that I can tell you. Because we're not going to let New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit and Baltimore and all of these, Oakland is a mess, all run by liberal Democrats.
More federal law enforcement to some of these cities?
More federal law enforcement, that I can tell you. In Portland, they've done a fantastic job. They've been there 3 days, and they really have done a fantastic job in a very short period of time, no problem. They grab them, a lot of people in jail, they're leaders. These are anarchists, these are not protesters.
So it's incredible because he's trying to justify his unconstitutional behavior in sending federal agents to these cities by saying, well, there's crime, which by the way, in the case of Chicago, you might be able to make that case. But he's doing this as a political move to help his numbers and polls when it comes to his chances of getting reelected. But since he's pretending like he cares so much about crime, and he's using crime as a justification for what he's doing, does that mean that we as Americans can go ahead and do whatever we want in order to tackle the crime that's taking place in the White House every single day? The fact that the Treasury Department took hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer money and gave it out to Steve Mnuchin and Donald Trump's buddies in the middle of this pandemic with absolutely no transparency. Do we get to raid the White House over the fact that Donald Trump has used the office of the presidency in order to enrich himself? I mean, how many illegal acts have already been committed by Mr. supposed law and order, right? I mean, he is the definition of crime. He has engaged in crime his entire life. He has committed tax fraud in order to avoid paying taxes on the hundreds of millions of dollars he inherited from his daddy. Okay, he has inflated his assets for tax for purposes of committing fraud to obtain loans that he had no business obtaining. I mean, there's endless examples. The hush money payments to adult actresses in order to prevent any negative information about his affairs getting out before the election. I mean, the list goes on and on. Obstruction of justice. He's been impeached. I mean, he is the epitome of crime. And so does that mean that, hey, we're justified in doing whatever we want as American citizens because we got to do something about the crime in the White House? He's a disgusting human being and we need to get him out. He is a threat to our democracy. He's already dismantled our democracy quite a bit. And if we just allow him to do whatever he wants with federal agents treating civilians as if they're enemy combatants, it just sets the tone for the rest of the country. It just means that we don't have a democracy at all, period.
Yeah, so he mentioned in the tweet the other day that we're going to protect, and he capitalized our people. Okay, and in another portion, when talking about this issue of sending in federal forces, he said, "What if the crime spreads from the cities into the suburbs?" So this is a tried and true Republican tactic. So don't pretend that it's just Donald Trump. The Republicans have always done this. The George H.W. Bush ran the Willie Horton ad against Michael Dukakis. Scary black man let out of prison and then attacked a white woman. Oh my God, what if the scary people in the cities come to the suburbs? Only Donald Trump can protect you. Only the Republican Party can protect you. It's the oldest demagoguery there is overall, and certainly in American politics and Republican politics. So now when it comes to the specifics here, he flat out admitted, you saw it on the tape. They said, okay, what are you gonna do? I don't know, but I'll definitely do something. Wait a minute, how are you ordering federal forces into somewhere when you don't even know what it is that they'll be doing? That they'll be doing something that you haven't even thought of yet. So under what authority are you sending them? Of course, he never does his homework. The reporters are clearly going to ask you, why are you sending these guys in? Didn't even bother to come up with an excuse. So it's nakedly political. In every sentence he says, the Democrats, this is why I'm doing this. The Democratic mayors, the Democratic cities, the Democratic governors. In other words, I'm gonna use taxpayer money to do unconstitutional kidnappings in the streets so I could blame Democrats for the next 4 months so I can get reelected. It doesn't get a bigger violation of the Hatch Act, using your public office not to do the public service, but to help your own political campaign. He's now using his secret police to do that, to try to scare people into voting for him, to use racism to vote for him, etc. Wait, you're gonna send 150 people to Chicago because you said there was a lot of shootings. What federal crime was committed? The shootings are terrible, over 60 shootings, a dozen people killed. It breaks all of our hearts, and we've got to have a smart, thoughtful strategy towards that. But they are all local crimes. They're not part of the protest at all. They're not attacking federal courthouses. They have nothing to do with the federal government. So you're gonna send your federal secret police to do what? He said it there. He said, I like how they're grabbing people up. No, in our system of government, you're supposed to clearly identify yourself. You're supposed to have probable cause as to why they're getting him. Napolitano said in another portion of his speech, he's like, why aren't they going after the guys with the bats? Why are they grabbing random peaceful protesters? That doesn't make any sense, because it isn't about maintaining order. It's about politics. He likes the visual of grabbing random people from the streets that he calls anarchists or left wing, and then saying to everybody else, don't worry, I'll protect you from these guys.
You know why, Cenk? Because think about how Donald Trump's brain works. And believe it or not, there's somewhat of a brain in there. And it doesn't operate appropriately, but it operates in a way that's all about optics, right? So I can't ever forget about what he told reporters at the Wall Street Journal about masks, how he feels that people are wearing masks in the middle of this pandemic to make him look bad. And right now he's in panic mode. He sees the poll numbers. He knows they're not fake, even though he claims they are. And he sees that if the election were to be held today, he would not be reelected. And so in his mind, okay, we got to get rid of the optics of people out on the streets. We got to get rid of the optics, the visuals of unrest. We got to get rid of the visuals of people who are sick or could get sick or are afraid of getting sick. So let's try to get people to avoid wearing masks. That's what his MO is. This is who Trump is. He's all about that reality show fakeness of making it appear as though everything is rosy and great, so he looks good, so he can get reelected. That's what this is about. And if you're a peaceful protester and you happen to be in Portland, Oakland, Chicago, all of these places that are now dealing with the threat of federal agents, you're a little less likely to go out there and protest if this type of intimidation and terror is taking place on the streets of your city. This is what he wants. He wants to prevent people from going out there and practicing their constitutionally protected right to protest.
The Oakland police commissioner said they are not welcome, and 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 in Philadelphia too, where the local DA said, if they break local laws, the federal officers, they break local laws, I'm going to arrest them. And then they will be tried by a Philadelphia jury. So come and find out, okay? And so now we have the possibility that in cities like Oakland and Philadelphia, local law enforcement and federal law enforcement might pull weapons on one another. This is the mayhem that Donald Trump has created. He says we're gonna send a force into Detroit. Mayor of Detroit was like, why? We've actually been one of the most peaceful cities throughout all of these protests. There's been no fires, no rioting, no nothing in Detroit. Why? Because Donald Trump's a racist and he thinks Detroit, black people, dangerous. I'm sending people to Detroit, okay? Based on no evidence and no facts at all, right? And so the reason why we have the form of government that we have is it was thought out. It's not an accident. People have to do the different jobs at the different levels. So federal law enforcement tries to get in the way of local law enforcement. Of course, at some point they're going to have a disastrous clash. So, and Trump thinks chaos is not a pit but a ladder. He thinks that chaos helps him, and so he's trying to create more and more chaos, and in his mind protect his people. And you know exactly what that means when he says our people, and that he thinks that the country is as racist as he is, and if he does that he'll get the majority of people to vote for him. I think he's wrong, and I think he's going to lose in a landslide election, but we're going to find out.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.